Magic finding is now in full swing on this character, and it's going quite well. But in this game, that doesn't apply to every map. It will have you chasing towers, using precursors, and otherwise prepping your atlas well in advance. Which means clearing speed and efficiency is the name of the game. Flicker Strike can be a particularly difficult skill to work around to that end. In terms of speed, the ceiling is the highest of all skills in the game, but the floor can be quite low as well. So getting the proper setup to maximize Flicker Strike's clearing speed and efficiency is of the utmost importance if you want to use this skill to its fullest. That's what this video is for. Welcome to a deep dive on Flicker Strike and what is required to make the most of this skill in maps. Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back. It's new. Despite the title of the video, I'm here to tell you this is not going to be hack related content. It is strictly all about Flicker Strike. A tech heavy video on Flicker Strike, a deep dive. One of my favorite things to do. If you are someone who's playing Flicker Strike, you're definitely going to want to see this, especially if you're trying to use this skill in maps and maybe struggling a little bit with making it work, making the clear optimized. It's been quite a finicky skill, I think, for a lot of people, and I've seen various comments about it. A lot of good comments about it, but I've also seen a lot of people say it absolutely sucks in maps, that it can't kill anything, that the clear is really bad, that you always just end up going backwards anyway. That variety of comment, maybe some of that resonates with you. Hopefully you will have a little bit of a different outlook, a better outlook on it after this. Maybe you'll think about re-rolling to Flicker Strike. It definitely got quite the buzz right now. It's been showcased a bit on bossing and stuff. It definitely caught people's eye there. We're not going to be talking about bossing. That's kind of a different kind of video. Not really one I'm really that interested in making. To me, the magic of Flicker Strike is in how it can be used as a catalyst to get some absolute crazy speed and clear, but it is quite finicky in order to set up to do that. And I've had various setups that I've used. I'm going to show you some of those today. And depending on the quality of my gear at a given time and the particular gem link setup, I've kind of found a sweet spot where the clear is just absolutely phenomenal. And I've gotten out of that sweet spot too. Get into it and then get out of it, and I don't know, well, what happened? Where did my clear go? Well, I think I've finally cracked the code on it, so I want to show you that today. Check out the timestamps. You can see the ultimate version of it towards the end. You can take a look at a max roll guide down below, which will have basically all the information there if you don't want to watch the video. But if you are interested and you want to learn a thing or two about how important the gem links are to set up for Flicker Strike and Heralds, because they're going to be playing a big role here, the relationship between those two things, or three things, because there's two Heralds, is extremely important. So let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start with Flicker Strike, and we should probably read the skills since it is a deep dive. It's different than PoE1's version. It has an AoE tag, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a little while. It's very important to take note of that. Melee strike skill that auto sort of teleports, apparently dashes, doesn't teleport on the initial attack, which is also important in the case of understanding how momentum support works, for example. Attack speed is very low on one attack. If you have no power charges, it doesn't feel like that amazing of a skill unless you have a whole bunch of attack speed. But yeah, it just kind of slowly, dashes off into whatever enemy it can get its hand on. And if there are power charges, they're currently linked to the character, it will attempt to go around and hit many different enemies within range. Or if there's just one, it will hit the same one many times, 10, 20 times, depending on how many power charges you have. And the attack damage percent is pretty high, and then the attack speed is ridiculously high for the subsequent attacks. That's why the very first initial attack looks a little bit slow, but then everything else happens in the blink of an eye, and it's quite satisfying when it works well, of course. Now, I'm going to get asked this, of course, because this is the most asked question I think I've ever received. How do you get power charges? It comes on, in my case, cast on freeze. This isn't the only way to get it. But for cast on freeze to work, you're going to need a cold damage roll somewhere in the build. A big one on the rings with Pillar of the Caged God is good for an attribute stacking variation. Or a major cold damage roll on the weapon if you're using more of a traditional setup, of course. That is going to make cast on freeze work and flip over very, very frequently. And then you really just want Profane Ritual and Profusion in there. So when it reaches 100%, if there's no corpse available, it will sit on it until there is, until you freeze something and there is a corpse nearby. If you put another skill in here, it makes the cold cast on, freeze, recycle through, and it dumps all the energy, and then it has to build it up again because it's going to dump it for Voltaic Mark by itself. So it's a little bit riskier and definitely requires a little higher skill cap to get a bunch of power charges with an extra skill in there. And requires good gear and very fast-paced gameplay. But if you do achieve that, you can pull off having a mark as well as having an incredibly high amount of power charges coming in a short period of time. Bonus points if you have the other remaining 5th and 6th link. Get some energy there. Not absolutely required, though. So you can also do the Resonance Keystone and Combat Frenzy. I'm not going to go deep into that, but there's an issue with that in maps that you cannot actually get power charges while flickering. So the nice thing about the Profane Ritual is it is a delayed effect. The power charges come in immediately after flickering. So, I mean, it's just fantastic timing, basically. I know it seems weird to use a skill like this as an invoker, but it works quite well. And so that's what most of the highest level players are using it in maps. Now, for bossing, Combat Frenzy and Resonance is generally going to be better, I would say, with most setups. All right, so that's Flicker Strike, and that's power charges out of the way. We're going to talk about Heralds in a minute, but first, our very first setup, let's get into a map, and I'm going to show you Flicker Strike with no Heralds. So we have a baseline understanding of how it works, and I'm going to kind of try to teach this to you guys as far from like ground zero up. It might be a little bit boring for those of you who figured out how this works halfway already, and you can skip around the video if you want. But I'm going to pretend you know very little about how this works. And so there have been some complaints, definitely, about Flicker Strike not being very good because it just doesn't do damage. It's like you just flicker around everywhere and you don't actually kill anything. So I have a very well-geared character, and I'm just going to put a white map in here, and maybe I'm going to outgear the content. I'm not exactly sure, but let's see what happens when I try to just use Flicker Strike to kill things. Okay, I got Flicker Strike on key 5 here, and I got to find some monsters. You see I got the cast on freeze to 0%. We'll see if it goes up. Now I'm just using Flicker Strike by itself, and I got pretty fast attack speed, and this tanks a lot of mana there. Alright, so there's a corpse. It did actually find a corpse. I'm going to use the power charges. And I shouldn't have actually used them because now I got Charged Staff. I don't really want to show Charged Staff, but I guess we'll just... I'll just show you everything. Charged Staff, alright. Yeah, let's keep going. Let's actually get some power charges for Flicker Strike. It's okay if I die. I only have 1 bar of XP. Okay, there we go. Alright, we got... Oh yeah, I forgot I have Charge Infusion on. That's part of the build. Yeah, I'm using Charge Infusion as part of the build. It's kind of hurting my demonstration here, though. I'm going to turn that off. Okay, there we go. We got to see a little bit. All right. We got some power charges. Let's see what happened here. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Well, it's actually doing enough damage to kill stuff, but that's because I'm really strong. So when I was under geared, it definitely wasn't enough. It's barely enough for me to kill these white monsters. Let me see if I can... Yeah, it's okay. Well, it's not exactly that great. It's okay. It's doing okay. It is freezing things. It's dropping chilled ground because I got, you know, the ascendancy point for that. Okay, when I get into a rare, you can see it's really not... It's just not... It's not doing that great, right? And if you are under geared, it's going to be worse than this. Like, you'll do this, you won't even kill the enemies. But you can see it's got some potential. It's okay. So now, let's go ahead and turn on the Herald of Ice. Because this is what I started using before. And Herald of Ice... Actually, I'm going to switch these right now. Herald of Ice used to look like something like this. Okay, so it does cold damage, and you would naturally put cold infusion in, and then you would maybe hopefully shock the enemy some other way if you're kind of a lightning cold focused monk, and you hopefully get Innervate to pop this way, although I used to put this in Charged Staff as well. And then you're probably not going to run Conduction, but yeah, you wouldn't be running that with that setup. And then let's see, Magnified Effect, because you want the pops to be bigger, and Cold Mastery. Okay, so we can call this a pretty nice 4-link, okay? Or 5-link, rather. So let's see what it looks like when I have a Herald in place. So you can see the Herald pops going off, and suddenly, you know, even without power charges, it just looks like it's really cranking out a lot of clear, right? Those pops are really big. And I got a few power charges here, so we'll see. Yeah, and you can see it just has a much greater capacity to actually clear. Yeah, look at that. That's really not bad. Really not bad. That's with no buffs, no Ice Bite, no Innervate. And that would be kind of like a step 2 in the process. And for a long time, I was kind of running the build like that. Would use Flicker Strike, would be a little bit lightning based, and then have Herald of Ice in play and try to make the most out of that. Killing shocked enemies, getting Innervate. Still can't seem to get power charge. Okay. Okay, so you get the idea. Then, certain setups suggested that maybe combining Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder would be really good, especially if you're a monk and if you're doing things like this, going for Eye of the Blizzard and Eye of the Thunder. You know, it just seems to fit really well thematically, and then you just get even better clear right because you're running both. So you got Lightning Infusion on a Lightning Seal, of course. You wouldn't be running Ice Bite probably because you're not going to freeze with this, but I don't know, just kind of ignore that for now. It's going to all make sense in a moment when we look at subsequent setups. But, you know, Lightning Mastery, long shot, because if the attack is at far range, which it is, quite often it'll really go off well. And so I got my Herald of Thunder stacks, and so it's forcing lightning bolts down, which is really nice. And then you can see I'm getting a few power charges, and wow, I even killed that monster. I somehow completed the map already. That was a really short map. But now I have even better clear, right? So I got the pops from Herald of Ice, and I got the bolts from Herald of Thunder. And so if for some reason I'm not killing, you look, getting a little bit of chaining there. If I'm not killing enemies in one go at it with just the Herald of Ice, I probably am with the Herald of Thunder, right? So that was actually a pretty comfy setup and definitely worked well. And my guides up to this point kind of suggested either the Herald of Ice or the Herald of Thunder setup this way. But then we have a new variation which the community kind of stumbled upon because, you know, I used to have Ice Bite and Charge Staff, or maybe I had Innervate and Charge Staff, trying to figure out how to get those buffs up. Because if you don't understand, haven't played these characters, a major power spike occurs if you can figure out a way to make Ice Bite and Innervate have super high uptime. And they definitely didn't have uptime, a very good uptime there in that little bit of showcase that I showed you. But now, what we have going on here, and a lot of people started running this, I don't know where it initially originated from, but a lot of content creators talk about this, I've even talked about this a little bit, is a sort of reverse elemental ailment setup with the Herald. So Herald of Ice is, I assume, designed not to be able to put out elemental ailments, but it just says it can't freeze. And then Herald of Thunder can't shock. And that should be the end of it, right? It should be the end of it. Some people are using that special ring, Porcelcan, or whatever its name is, I can't remember the pronunciation, which kind of makes Herald of Ice go absolutely crazy. It can actually be a bit of a problem, because if it's shattering chilled enemies, the Herald of Ice can chill, and then you don't actually get corpses. So if you're trying to run this with that ring, you're going to have issues finding corpses, because Herald of Ice will blow up a frozen enemy, but then kill enemies near it and not actually freeze them. So you get to keep the corpse to get the power charges. That's why that works out pretty fine otherwise. A lot of people were confused about it, myself included, for quite a while on how that worked. But anyway, let's switch them out, because now we're going to make Herald of Ice shock, and that's where this comes in. So if Herald of Ice shocks, or it has a potential to shock, we can run Lightning Infusion, and we can run Conduction to give it an extra chance, and then we can run Innervate, because if it kills a shocked enemy, that's great. Then for Herald of Thunder, we can run Cold Infusion with Glaciation, which is like the mirrored copy of Conduction for cold, and then Ice Bite, which is a mirrored copy of Innervate for cold. And this just is a phenomenal setup that actually works pretty well if you already have a fair bit of flat lightning and or cold in the build somewhere. If we check the damage, we can see that my Herald of Ice is doing a lot of lightning damage. Whoa! It's a lot of lightning damage. I mean, it's still doing a lot of lightning damage to this lightning heavy build. The more interesting one here, because it's a lightning heavy build, is what happens to Herald of Thunder when I try to force cold into it. And so you can see it's really lightning heavy. It's not doing all that much cold. But now it's actually doing more cold than lightning, even though I'm lightning heavy. And that's the power of Cold Infusion in this place. And then, you know, you would have magnified effect and long shot and cold mastery and lightning mastery. And now, I mean, look at this. The chain, you can actually see it chaining in real time. You can see it chaining in a distance. The Heralds are going absolutely nuts. It's off the screen. I mean, it's just off the screen. And, you know, I can still get some chains myself on the Flicker Strike. But one thing you notice, that was a great example there. I mean, it just obliterated the screen in ice and lightning. But I didn't move anywhere. You notice I didn't move anywhere? I mean, there were monsters everywhere. I should have just chained all the way down there, right? But the problem with this setup, and this is a major issue I had when I started using this setup, it looks beautiful. It looks like amazing. It just blows up entire screens, but I don't go anywhere. And now suddenly Flicker Strike itself seems like it's nowhere near as valuable as it was, like actually getting me around the map or whatever. And this is kind of the final step to figuring out or cracking the code on how to make it work. So now we're going to take you to the final step. Where I think I'll open up one more map. I'm going to have to because I've just run out of monsters here. Let's get into one more map and we'll kind of clear it more. Alright, lucky me, I got a second grotto and I will just be able to kind of do apples to apples here because we'll put in another non-modified map. Kind of heading to the tower anyway. I'm not really losing any efficiency out of this, except in the time it takes. I just say that because, you know, it is talking about how to be efficient doing this. It doesn't work when you're making a video, actually. Anyway, now my setup is as such, and I got this here, and I got this here. But I bring you back to Flicker Strike and its AoE tag. What is that AoE tag doing there? It doesn't exist in the first game. I started asking around in a prohibited library. I did get an answer from somebody. And I read into it that the AoE tag, the only thing I can think it even refers to is the chaining range. Now, chain range I'm very familiar with. Playing a Deadeye, you can chain, but only if you have fast enough projectiles or long enough chaining range. Else, the projectile will die out before it reaches its target. The same kind of applies here with the preemptive distance required to chain into additional packs of enemies. And it's a bit of an issue when your heralds are so overwhelmingly powerful that they just seem to kill stuff like in the immediate vicinity anyway. Like you would really need a big chaining range. So the magic decision that I made that made this really work was dropping concentrated effect. Would probably be the single biggest thing, because this is actually reducing the chaining range of it. It does a lot of extra damage. You can actually see it's making Flicker Strike do way more damage, so the upside of it doing 40% more area damage still counts. It still counts as area damage, but it's not really doing area damage. It's just area chaining range distance. So it's a little bit odd how that works. And then instead, why don't we take this all the way? And if I'm having an issue with the Heralds being too overwhelming, why don't I just dampen down the Herald, make it do more damage, but reduce the AoE range? You know, I tried to put it in Herald of Thunder a while, but I'm not sure if it affects it because it doesn't actually. I think Herald of Thunder also checks the range. Maybe Concentrate Effect is only a downside for Herald of Thunder. Anyway, you can try it on either one to see what fits best. But the important thing here is to actually give Flicker Strike additional chaining range. So we're going to give it Magnified Effect, which is not going to increase the damage, but it's going to greatly increase the chance for Flicker Strike to actually chain from one monster to another when I have power charges. So let's see how this plays out. I mean, you probably already kind of understand a little bit because you would have seen it in the showcase. Now, it's not just going to like find an enemy halfway across the map and chain into it, but if there's anything even remotely nearby, it's going to work. And you see the Heralds are still doing some heavy lifting in the clear. Now, every button I'm pressing here is just Flicker Strike. I'm not actually using Charge Staff. This build is multi-dimensional, you know, for bossing and stuff. But this is, I've found that the clear can just be, let me look at that, absolutely phenomenal. If I just walk around and press 5 on my keyboard, and I will actually clear faster than virtually any other, certainly at this budget level, faster than any other build that I'm aware of. You can let me know in the comments if there's another build that can do this, has this potential. And again, understanding that The floor is a little low, the ceiling is very high, and I think so far in this map demonstration, I'm showing you, the relatively high place that the ceiling can have. Fortunately, it's going pretty well. And you'll see I'm never flickering backwards. Why am I never flickering backwards? Well, I'm not flickering backwards because I'm actually killing everything behind me. You can't flicker backwards if everything behind you is dead. Now, this has some different ramifications if you're doing a breach where things can keep spawning, but at least in terms of like the in-between maps, the maps I have to do to get from one tower to the next, which is literally what I'm doing in the middle of the showcase. I flickered behind me there because there's no other monster, and it's actually quite impressively convenient because basically this is like a blink skill except with no cooldown, and it does damage, and it chains repeatedly. And I don't have to target anything. Auto-targeting in Vault 2. And then the Herald just blows everything up. Like, worst case scenario, the Herald just blows up the screen. And I don't go anywhere. Best case scenario is the Herald blows up the screen and I just shoot like 4 screens forward, having killed everything already, and drop the Divine Orb like 3 screens behind me, and I go back up, pick it up or whatever. But yeah, that's what we want to see. So there you go, guys. This is the end of the showcase. Just kind of, it's so easy, and the mana is not even a problem. Okay, I have like nothing invested in mana. I have 2% mana on kill. That's it. That's literally all I have right now. I have 85 mana per second. So if you do a whole bunch of other stuff, if you like Tempest flurrying around all the way down, you drain your mana or whatever. But this is actually a very mana efficient way to play, as long as you're actually clearing and killing enemies. You see. See what I'm talking about? Game almost killed me there. I almost got stunned and died in that fire after death explosion. Don't do that. Almost did. Well, it's a good day to be a streamer, I guess. So, yeah, that is the end of the video. Just go right into the conclusion after that. I don't know if I covered everything, but yeah, this was obviously a very deep dive, I think, on Flicker Strike with multiple different variations of how it works, starting at the baseline and understanding, what happens when you crank it up. The Heralds play a very big role in the clear. They're not absolutely mandatory to clear if you have a strong enough character with enough damage, and you're not doing delirium content, even on tier 15, the monsters don't have modifiers of defensive. Yeah, Flicker Strike could technically be enough by itself, but it's just pitiful compared to when you set up Heralds this way. So that is my suggestion to you guys. Set up your Heralds with these links, and set up your Flicker Strike with these links. And you know what? If you only have 3 support gems, fine. That's the only difference. That's it. Actually, you know what? Maybe it'd be this. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Perpetual Charge, Magnified Effect would be the 2 most important. And then we just set these up like this. As you get extra links, fine. Do it. You need a cold damage roll in the build, or you need a lightning damage roll in the build if you are doing mostly cold. This will not work so well if you're trying to do like Brotherhood, Call of the Brotherhood, to get both the lightning and the cold. However, every iteration of gain as extra lightning will actually be real lightning damage, even on a Call of the Brotherhood. So it's not totally lost cause, and I was kind of messing around with that. That's kind of a side point, because I did make a build, kind of a build guide real quick for Call of the Brotherhood variant of the build. But now I'm working on attribute stacking and trying to get rarity. Got actually about 300 rarity in the build right this second, and it can go up to nearly 500 or over 500 potentially if I actually went kind of crazy, but we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to go off the deep end on that. But anyway, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive in Flicker Strike and how to make it the most of it in your maps. So are you enjoying Flicker Strike in maps, or is it as frustrating to you as it is for some people on the forums? Let me know. Hope this video was of good value to you, and we'll see you in the next one.